Brian, Robert Fox asks, how severely has this epidemic affected the finances of Shrewsbury Town Football Club immediately, and what are the club's financial prospects going forward, i.e. next season?
We've been affected really badly by the COVID situation. You know, it's pretty obvious clubs in League 1 and League 2 rely on match day income, and have had no match day income and no income for the last year. The only income we've actually had, which has been new income, was part of the bailout money from the Premier League, but you know, that wasn't to anything like what we hoped it would be. You know, when I look at some of the clubs, some of the bigger clubs in League 1, for example, have ended up with, you know, 2 million, and certain clubs like ourselves and other ones have ended up with like about the 400,000 mark. So it's, but when you look at, you know, the wage bill, we've all got a wage cap of 2.5 million. So when you're talking about 400 grand coming in, it's only going to do, you know, a couple of months' wage bill. So yeah, we've been hit really, really hard. You know, even our hospitality, our conference and events income, which is our 365 day a year, it's been wiped out for a year. It's been a very, very difficult time to get through this. We've unfortunately had to make redundancies. We've had to try and curb at any cost we can and save as much money as we possibly can to ride our way through this.
Paddy Pringle asks, I am keen to support the club but cannot get to enough games to justify a season ticket. Would the club consider selling 5 or 10 game blocks at a slight discount? It would surely help cash flow for the club. Yeah,
well, we introduced the fan card a couple of years ago, which was basically for that. We also did the flexi ticket too. The idea with the fan card was somebody paid £5 and they got £2 off a game. So we've always been aware of that, and this came to light a few years ago that there was a number of people can't justify a season ticket but perhaps come to say 10 games a year, so it was to kind of reward them and give them some kind of loyalty programme. So again, you know, the fan card is something that we introduced a few years ago, and you know, there's been a lot of people have taken that up to get the £2 discount, which obviously means over, you know, whatever 10 games you're saving £20, so you're getting 1 game free, which is some form of discount.
His next question is regarding the shirts. Any word on shirts for next season? Always seems odd not to launch them in May, so people can buy them to wear in the summer instead of August.
It's something we're going through just now. We're looking at the shirts for next season. Well, we have some options there on the table, which we're looking at and just deciding what we do. Obviously, we haven't sold anything like the number of shirts we sold in previous years, and I'm sure that's down to supporters not being in the stadiums, which again doesn't help our income streams in the last year. So we have to be clever about and careful how we do that again for next season.
Danny J asks, does Harry Chapman have an option to buy in his contract, and how is Aaron Pierre doing?
Harry Chapman is on loan, so there's no option to buy him. He's also under 24. I believe that Blackburn have got an option on him, which they could use if they wanted to, and that's something we need to review over the next few months.
Another transfer one for you here.
Going to answer the Aaron Pierre one as well.
Yes.
Aaron Pierre is getting closer to the fitness again, and hopefully it shouldn't be too long before he's back.
Another transfer one, Ash D. Max. The club usually gives out 2-year contracts to players, which in recent years means we have extensive rebuilds nearly every summer. Will the club be following the example of sides like Lincoln and Peterborough and giving its better players longer contracts?
Well, I think if you look at Ollie Norburn as an example, Ethan Ebanks, Landell, Aaron Pierre, we signed them on in 3-year deals. Sometimes it can be down to the negotiation. An example of that is Josh Laurent, who was here for 2 years, despite us paying money for him. But that was a deal breaker for Josh and his agent. He only wanted a 2-year deal at Shrewsbury at the time, which we didn't want to do. So it was a case of either you take him for 2 years and pay the money for him, or you don't sign him at all. So we felt it was the right decision was to sign Josh in a 2-year, even though we wanted him to sign a 3-year at the time, but he wouldn't do it.
Does the club support a subscription streaming service for all Football League games, i.e. a Football League version of Netflix rather than a pay-per-view current model?
Does that mean like for all games, so that somebody can watch any game they want?
I think in terms of, say...
Just Shrewsbury Town?
Yeah, so you pay like £200 a year and...
I think we all have to be creative in everything we do in the world that we've been living in just now. where more people are using the streaming service, at least then people are getting access to watch whether it's Shrewsbury Town games or Lincoln City games or whatever it is. I think from a commercial point of view, you know, now that people are in the habit of that, if there's a way of doing that, but when we do get fans back, if and when we do get fans back, the most important thing is to try and get that revenue from match days, you know, and the slight concern I've got is that if you're then offering that opportunity for people to watch a live stream of the game, then they won't attend the game, and it's not just about the match ticket income that then affects your catering monies, your programme monies, and all the other bits and bobs that where we would normally try and maximise our income streams, and which we haven't had for a year.
Darren Mansell asks, how much revenue has the iFollow service given us, and will this be extended to live video on a Saturday come September? What percentage are we down compared to gate receipts?
It's nothing. Listen, there's no comparison between gate receipts and iFollow revenues. If you take a home game, we're obviously giving all the season ticket holders a free iFollow pass. We're probably averaging at the moment for a home game somewhere of non-season ticket holders maybe 300 to 400 at 10 quid less the VAT. It's not, you know, £3,000. We're also getting, the way it works for the away support is you agree what the normal away support would be. So for example, our game against Fleetwood, you know, I can't remember the exact figure, but say it was, they would normally bring maybe 185 supporters to Shrewsbury. So the first 185 that they would normally bring, we keep that as well. So, you know, I think their viewing numbers were something like that. But then anything over that, then they keep as well. So from a away game point of view, it really depends on the numbers that attend, you know, normal away games. I'm trying to think of a recent example. Rochdale, Tuesday night there. I think we would normally take roughly 450 to Rochdale, so they keep the first 450. But because the team have been doing a bit better recently as well, the numbers are slightly up for away games as well. So we're probably, and because the season ticket holder doesn't get that, you're probably 600 to 700. So you're maybe making slightly some kind of money out of that. But it's all that's doing is going towards costs. You know, look at the costs we've got just now. If we stay in hotels the night before games for the longer journeys like we will on Saturday for Charlton, you know, we've got single rooms for every single person, so they're social distancing. We've got 2 coaches going to every away game, so all these costs are adding up. But it's, you know, it certainly doesn't replace match day income. It gives some form of income, but it's not a lot of money in the grand scheme of things, unfortunately.
The next one from the same person. How have we managed to plug the shortfall with any lost sponsorship? Will there be a reduced budget next season because of the lack of funds?
To be fair to our sponsors, most of our sponsors have, you know, have kept up their support of the club, and we're really grateful for them that, you know, they've been able to do that. Obviously, we haven't been able to sell like the trackside advertising that's not in TV view, so that's had a hit as well. Programme advertising and various things like that, we've lost out on some sponsorship for that because there's no real benefit to it and there's not really good supporters in. It is something that is a concern because it's difficult as well to get sponsors these days because it's not just football. You know, many businesses are suffering financially because of the COVID situation. So and also some sponsors and some people don't necessarily want to be seen to be spending money on advertising at football when perhaps they've got people on furlough on 80% or they've laid staff off. So it is a fine line, but you know, we are very grateful that we've got some real loyal supporters there who are our sponsors that have stood by us through this season.
And will that affect the budget for next season?
The budget for next season will really, because of the scrapping of the salary cap, which is now under review, what we do going forward, but at the moment it falls back to salary cap management protocol, which means you can spend 60% of your allowable income, which so really depends, you know, how much income we can actually generate to be able to then spend 60% of it, whether that affects the budget or not.
Richard Stocken asks, what incentive is being planned for season ticket renewal for next season?
Well, we're looking at that really closely just now, just trying to analyse it. We're kind of aware that, you know, most people I think we've had 3 or 4 games this season where season ticket holders have been able to attend, and then we've had an iFollow pass for every other game. Again, going back to with the salary cap management protocol, going back in and being able to spend 60% of your income. The difficulty is, as an example of that, if you then knock back a third of your season ticket cost next season because you're discounting everybody for the loss of their income last year, then, you know, say our season ticket income for round numbers is say 600 grand. If you're then discounting that to make it, and you're only getting 400 grand, then that 200 grand, you lose 60% of that in your wage bill next year. So it's a bit of a dilemma, and we're trying to look at that creatively to make sure that we can be seen to be giving something back without affecting too much our wage budget for next season, because the last thing we want to do is with the salary cap going out of 2.5 million and then it becoming a 60% again, we have to be trading very carefully with that, and it's a bit of a dilemma at the moment, if I'm honest.
Nick Newton with the next one. With the proposed new building for Shrewsbury Town in the community hub, what will happen to the current hub, which consists of porter cabins? Will they be relocated to the training ground and reused, or will they be used for something else, such as a larger club shop, or will they be sold?
Again, it's probably more of a question for Shrewsbury Town, the community as a separate organisation, who have obviously got the funding for the new 4G, 3G pitch out the back of the south stand, and obviously their second step in that was to then look at a bigger building, because whilst it's been difficult for everybody this year, you know, Shrewsbury Town and the community have still continued to grow, and the facilities they've now got, now they're going to have a 4G pitch at the back there as well to utilise too. You know, they're still got a big staff. The staff are still growing, roughly about 50 full-time staff now, which is fantastic for everybody connected with the club, and especially the charity. What happens to those buildings, and if and when that building is ever developed, is something, a conversation that, you know, Shrewsbury Town, the community, and Shrewsbury Town Football Club will need to consider, because the football club actually own the porter cabin buildings, if you like, and it's utilised by Shrewsbury Town and the community. So, you know, it's probably a long-term thing we need to look at, you know, if and when funding is available, and Jamie can move to the next step of building a fit-for-purpose building to go with the pitch that's being constructed just now.
Sandra Park asks, when town supporters are allowed back into the stadium, will season ticket holders be able to use the iFollow service as we currently do, instead of actually coming to the ground? As a senior lady, it is much easier and safer, particularly on a cold, dark, wet Tuesday night.
It's a difficult question. It's one that's probably going to be an EFL question rather than a club-by-club basis. It's something I've brought up before when we thought fans were going to come back early in the year, because we were conscious that because of the tier structure in England, some people weren't able to cross tiers to come into Shrewsbury, for example, for a 2,000 crowd. And obviously some people as well maybe don't feel comfortable coming back until they've had the 2 vaccines. It's probably going to be a process of looking at how that is slowly developed. But on the other hand, the difficulty is, if we do allow the streaming service to continue to operate when we eventually do get full crowds back, then we can't have that affecting our match day income as well, for the reasons I've set out in the previous questions.
Andy Lewis asks, what is happening regarding season tickets next season? Will there be a rollover to next season for current season ticket holders, as some other clubs have done, or will there be discount on prices?
I think I've kind of covered that already with the previous question. It's something we're looking at really closely just now to try and come up with a creative way that doesn't affect our budget next season, but also give something back, or it looks at how we can potentially work in some scheme that season ticket holders feel as if they're getting value for money. Because from our point of view, and from a cash point of view, we would like to be able to sell season tickets sooner rather than later. So it's something that's a priority just now, is to try and come up with a plan that we will then engage with our SLOs, Roger and Mike, and put out to the wider fan base to then have a look at of how we see this going forward. But we have to also be careful about the salary protocol with 60% at the same time.
Tom Stevens, I have been a town supporter for over 50 years and remember the glory days of Graham Turner when we were in the old second division and we were a match for anyone. My question is, do you realistically think that Town could rise to those levels again, given the current economic climate and the financial clout of the Sunderlands and Ipswiches of the world?
I think it was probably a better chance when the salary cap was in, with 2.5 million, if I'm honest, because it brought everybody more in line. So Sunderland couldn't have a 13 million or 15 million or 30 million wage bill. which they've had in previous seasons in League One, albeit they didn't get out of it. But I think look back to 17-18 season when we finished third in the league and were in the top two for a lot of the season. You need to look at Wickham, who probably had a lesser budget than us last season, but still managed to get promoted to the Championship. I've always believed that if you get the right players in recruitment and you get the right players on the pitch, then anything can happen in this league. We've seen it with Burton before going up as well. So again, you don't necessarily need to have the biggest budget to have success. And I think we've proven that even recently with some of the results we've had against some of the teams that we probably shouldn't be beaten based on financials, but we have.
The question continues on. It does seem that as soon as we have a really classy player, he is scouted by wealthier clubs. Is this due to our wage structure and or financial fair play? No one can blame a player for looking to advance his career, but could we become more attractive?
It's a difficult question, to be honest with you. I'm trying to think of anybody who has left here with ended up. If you go back to the Nolans and the Totos of this world, to be offered in the Championship probably more than double what they were on here, and that's the difficulty with football. You've got 80% of central monies going to the Championship. You're getting £8 million, so therefore you can spend a lot more on wages, whereas in League One you're at 1.4 million central monies. So it is sometimes difficult to live within your means, which is really important and is done as well over the years that we've been able to get through the COVID situation that none of us expected. But then you wouldn't just suddenly go crazy and throw money at it and put the club in jeopardy, because the most important thing is the club for the long-term stability.
The next one is from Paul Biddulph. Do you think that Sky in particular show bias to their choices showing live TV games with the so-called bigger clubs in our division? And if so, what can we do about it? Additional revenue for clubs has never been more needed right now. And could the broadcasters not share games equally, as it seems many teams, including Shrewsbury, have been overlooked this season and in previous?
There's actually not really much money in a live TV game with Sky. Certainly, I can't remember the exact contract that Sky have got, but say it's, for example, 30 games in League One and League Two over the course of the 2020-2021 season. And there's a small facility fee of like 10 or 20 grand, for example, for being shown live on the TV. But the downside of that, if you're in a non-COVID situation and you had fans back, then with the game being live on the TV, invariably some people will just watch it from their house and not come to the game, which the secondary spend then is lost at the stadium here, for example. I think we all like to see games on TV, Shrewsbury Town games on the TV. And I think obviously you need to be on the top half of the table for Sky to show that interest, especially for a club like Shrewsbury. I think sometimes you're right. Paul's right. You look at someone, they're looking for a Portsmouth, Plymouth, or big clubs, big attendances that people are going to have the audience figures that they're looking for as well, because that helps them if they've got good audiences. But it also helps our sponsors too. So if we can get live TV games, it does help our sponsors get some additional coverage and nationwide coverage that they wouldn't normally get.
Rachel Dillaway wants to know, what do you most enjoy about working at Shrewsbury Town?
Difficult question. Listen, I think every day is different at Shrewsbury. I think in football, every day is different. I think no matter what your role in football, doing this just now, and I'm going to a League One meeting in the next hour or so. I've had a meeting with the community this morning, so every day is very, very different. Whether it's football stuff, whether it's community, or whether it's EFL or governance, whatever it can be. What I enjoy is the variety of it all. Martin
Berry wants to know, what is your favourite tipple, or are you teetotal?
I'm certainly not teetotal. Favourite tipple probably, I like a glass of wine, but I also like vodka as well, so I'm a bit of a vodka snob as well, so I like Grey Goose and Belvedere. Although I found that Lidl have got their version of that, which is less than half the price. I think it's called Ignis, and I would recommend anybody who drinks vodka to try their Ignis at $14.99 in your local Lidl store right across the road. Maybe we'll get some sponsorship out of Lidl for this now.